Hi, I'm Danielle Roberts. I'm an osteopathic family practice board certified physician with my master's in nutrition. I think I first became very interested just in the body in general. I did gymnastics for 9 years, so I started when I was 5 and I competed up to national level when I was 13. And at that point, I had torn the ligaments in both of my ankles, and I was on crutches for a year in high school. Gymnastics was probably the most important thing to me in my life at that time. I had hoped to go to the Olympics. So when I had the injury and I went through physical therapy and they helped me to rehab it, I became very interested in physical therapy, in the body, in how to start to rehab injuries. But I also started struggling then with some compulsive eating habits. I think gymnastics was also an outlet for me. I used to practice 3 hours a night after school each night and compete on weekends. And when I no longer had that, I noticed that my eating behaviors were changing, I think, in a lot of ways to try to cope with the emotionality of being 13, growing up, not being able to do gymnastics anymore, having, a somewhat unstable home life in certain aspects, and I became very interested in how the mind, emotional, body connection worked. I became much more interested in eating and eating disorders. I became much more interested in those mental aspects about that and how that related to physical performance. So I think that started it, and then just the rest of my, I had different experiences throughout my life that continued to hone my interests through my struggle to understand that. I became very motivated to try to help other people. The reason I began studying with Mr. Ranieri is because I had studied many other aspects of medicine that could start where I thought I could start to uncover some of the mysticism around, affirmations and the law of attraction and how that relates more practically, scientifically, to disease. And Mr. Ranieri seemed to have a real understanding of a very foundational, minimal set, an understanding of how the physical body, the emotions, and the mental, our thoughts worked. Now, I at this point went to go study with Mr. Ranieri, and I was observing the effects of rational inquiry in different people's lives on physical disease, and eventually had earned the opportunity to work with him and some other partners in building XOSO. XOSO, to me, was my dream. It was everything that I had been working towards. So all my medical knowledge could be utilized, but in addition, all of the more consciousness and awareness work, yoga work, behavioral understanding, psychology, and we built a system to be able to measure and study exactly how our thoughts and emotions could lead to physical consequences in our body, both good and bad. Now, we grew very quickly. In 18 months, we were in 3 different countries. We were doing great, but there hit a point where I think we grew too fast for the infrastructure for different things. It was my first company. There's many different things that happened. And everything that had been building and doing so well seemed to be kind of crashing down in my life. And I knew what we were working on was significant. I knew it had the potential to change the way medicine is done in this country and the way people experience their lives. So for me at that moment, DOS was a way to build the things in me that I hadn't quite built yet, to get myself to the next level so I could be the kind of person that could make the changes that I wanted to help make in the world. For a woman who's fairly well established in her own self, I still felt I needed a man to be significant, to be safe, to be loved, to exist in a way, like to be seen. And I still struggle with that on a regular basis. And those were things I didn't see at first. Those were very subconscious things, but I oftentimes, I couldn't move to Albany on my own. I had to, bring my significant other with me, or, I couldn't perform and do the dances I wanted without a partner. I felt very exposed or vulnerable to just be myself and stand on my own 2 feet. And I feel that every day. And I think DOS was intended to really help women have a sense of self beyond needing some sort of protection from a man, or needing some sort of validation or consent or approval from a man, so that we could feel we were on the right track. So many of the complaints seemed so petty and so surreal. I didn't believe for a second that they would surmount to anything. But when the New York Times article came out, that was a wake-up call. I never thought it would go that far. And even then, the first statement on October 17th of 2017, the reporters in the New York Times had clearly mentioned that the medical commissioner, that Miss Edmondson, had made a complaint to the department, the OPMC, the Office of Professional Medical Conduct, and the medical commissioner and the OPMC had clearly stated, we're not going to investigate Dr. Roberts' license because she was not acting as a physician at the time of the branding, and all of her actions were consensual, which they had evidence by text message. So this was very clearly stated in the New York Times. This was very clearly the evaluation and opinion of the people that she had brought the complaint to. So although it was surreal that this ever even made it to the New York Times, it was also clear to me, okay, obviously they see this was consensual. This had nothing to do with the practice of medicine. This was completely a personal endeavor that I had chosen to commit to and utilize my own personal life force and energy to participate in. 2 days later, after the media had amped up a lot of the women's stories, and there were some claims or statements made in the newspaper that Governor Cuomo wasn't protecting the welfare of the public. 2 days later, on the 19th of October 2017, there was another article published basically saying a spokesperson for Governor Cuomo is now going to be looking into this matter further, and we are in fact going to, investigate Dr. Roberts' license. So now they're investigating my license, but if they truly thought that this was a matter of that I was a threat to the public or to the public welfare, they could have suspended my license. They could have said, we have enough reason to believe that you would hurt people, that you would hurt women, that you would hurt your patients, and we are going to suspend your license until this matter is taken care of. That's not what they did. My agency also said, we can't continue to work with you while your license is under investigation. So although there were no charges pressed, there were, they hadn't suspended my license. They'd taken no actions against my license at all, because of what was in the media, and because my license was quote unquote under investigation. My agency would no longer try to place me with other hospitals. As I tried to put my resume together to try to figure out other options, many of the doctors wouldn't return my calls because of what was in the news. And I think shortly after that, as people were leaving Albany and leaving our community, we eventually made the decision to close the company, to close XOSO. The gossip and the hearsay I was referring to are essentially what's being published in the social media and the media. I think that people are relying essentially on a blogger with a vendetta to provide factual information. It's amazing to me that people don't really question his motives or question why he's so invested in creating such a horrible, hateful campaign. And it's also very odd to me that, I mean, the level of reporting, forget factual, unbiased information, but it's just pure smut. I mean, there's pictures and the language that's used. I mean, it's the National Enquirer. I don't mean to insult the National Enquirer, but I mean, it's the caliber of communication, the fact that people wouldn't question the motives, they don't question the information, they don't think critically about it, they don't think about the people that are on the other side of it. And that's what people, when they pull up my name, Dr. Danielle Roberts, that's what they see. They see that. They see lies and stories about me torturing or holding down women and branding them as part of a sex cult. I mean, now you've stirred up fear in people. They're not critically thinking. They feel scared for their own children. They're hateful. I don't know what they would do to me. They could try to hurt me. They could try to hurt other people. It's just not a responsible use of media or information at all. The loss of credibility in my life and not just in my professional life. I mean, I was speaking publicly, I was building a company, I was working at a hospital, I was doing many things that I really wanted to be doing, and my credibility there has been completely destroyed. Just more poignant to my own experience is that I didn't think that credibility could ever be rocked with my closest relationships. My friends, my family, my mother. Those relationships and what's happened, the effects on those relationships has been extremely painful and just very difficult. I mean, this has been going on for 2 years, and my mother still believes that I'm brainwashed. It's very painful to know that she's afraid every day for me. Every day she reads the Frank report. No matter how many times she's recognized that there's a bunch of information on there that's false, no matter how many times we've proven over and over, but I think from her perspective as a mother who loves, she feels helpless, and I've had countless hours of conversations just trying to help share my perspective, my understanding, why I chose what I did, what the real intention was behind all of this. And I think because that seed of doubt was planted, that I was brainwashed, or that somehow the women in DOS or the women in Nixian can't think for themselves and they can't make their own decisions, every conversation that I have with my mother and some other close friends, they already have planted in their mind that I'm not me, that I'm not here, that I'm not the one making my own decisions. I'm not credible in that sense. And no matter what I say, no matter how logical, no matter how convicted, it can be completely discredited, dispelled, thrown out because I've been brainwashed and I can't think for myself.